stay with that theme. We're seeing some innovation. Primary schools have returned to full-time classes, but overcrowding remains an issue. The Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga says there are plans in place. Let me take you to ENCA's Aviwe Mtila, who's been following developments and has been tracking the minister's visit to various schools in the last while. Aviwe, the schools that you have been visiting this morning, to what extent have they been able to adhere to such measures as social distancing, 1 meter apart?
I'm just struggling to hear you properly, but the real issues are on the ground around the social distancing measures and the very COVID-19 regulations that are supposed to be happening as the primary schools are allowed learners back in. This morning I spent the majority of the morning at Monde Primary School in Ekurhuleni, a well-performing school, but in speaking to one of the SGB leaders, she told me that in fact they've now had to alternate back to their previous ways of doing things, where they have two separate groups, Group A, which comes in for the week, and then the other group, Group B, comes in for the other week because of that problem of socially distancing. In fact, it's an issue that the minister, who was also there on the ground of basic education, Angie Motshekga, touched on, basically conceding that it's very difficult to maintain those social distancing measures, especially given that they now have to comply to a meter. In fact, what we saw ourselves is while even those regulations are in place for the particular school, those shifting and change of learners, they're still sitting side by side, not maintaining those regulations while they have halved basically the learners there. So an issue that I spoke about to Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, and this is what she had to say.
No, it won't be possible. In a class of 70, we will not be able to have even the half a meter. So where there is overcrowding, we have to deal with it first as a principal. But where we are not even, the size of the class does not even allow us to have 35, it's when we are negotiating that we reduce, and we still have to get it through cabinet, that we have advisory that for smaller kids we can even go to half a meter. Okay. But it's something in the pipeline which I still have to go and get permission for from cabinet and the National Corona Council. But it's an advisory that we got from the medical advisory committee that it is possible. It's happening internationally, and they have scientific evidence that it will work.
So, Aviwe, what's the sense we are getting then in as far as the ability to complete the academic work for this year, particularly for these primary schools faced with these challenges?
Well, the minister is talking of a 3-year recovery plan in order to accommodate the grades into moving them to the different tiers. In fact, she says that the grades that will be prioritized are grade 7 and the matrics in order for them to continue with their education. But for the other grades, while they'll be allowed and promoted to the various grades, they'll have to do some other subjects. They'll focus mainly on the subjects that will be key to get them to the other grade. But once they are on the other grade, they'll carry through the other subjects for a period of 3 years, just to order to recover. Another issue that I spoke to with the Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, let's take a listen on that.
Our recovery plan is a 3 years plan. Our recovery plan is a 3 years plan. But it keeps on changing because we are still not able to predict when we'll get stability. So what we did from last year was to trim the curriculum, remove other matters in the curriculum which we thought they can do without, though they are important. So we trimmed the curriculum. We have a 3 years recovery plan. So the recovery, we don't see it as a 1-year event. But we, for instance, when we did it last year, we were hoping that by June this year, we would have stabilized. Quite clearly, we have not stabilized. It means we have to renegotiate it and still expand it. But the recovery plan, it's a phase plan. It's not a grade plan.
And then how does it work? Will the grade 7s currently now go to grade 8, for example, next year? Or how will that 3-year recovery plan work?
It works on phases. For instance, grade 7s, we want them to all come because we won't be able to have, we won't have them next year. The same way we do with grade 12s, we can't have them beyond this year. That's why they're coming every day. They're using extra time. So the exit grades, we want them full-time. The internal grades, that's where the recovery plan, to say if the grade 1s, 2, 3, this is the plan, but 2, 3, 4, here's the plan. So it has been properly curated by our curriculum teams.
All right, thank you for that. That's ENCA's senior journalist, Aviwe Mtila. He was in conversation there with the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, about the situation in schools, particularly as primary schools return to full-time, 100% capacity in as far as the pupils are concerned, and the attendant problems that have been identified in the last 2 days.